You guys ever go to sleep at approximately 9:52 p.m. after a long and stressful day, and you slowly start to realize that you're not a child anymore and the friends you made then don't exist in your life now, and then you realize how alone you actually are outside of family, and your brain recognizing this feeling allows you to imagine a scenario where you do have friends and you're talking and hanging out with them, having a grand old time, but you snap out of it and it only worsens your feeling of loneliness, and you start to dread a potential future where you don't make any more friends, and outside of family, you don't talk to anyone in your life. Well, here is how Ferrari can win the F1 title still. The 2026 season of Formula 1 has been a strange one. Of course, I've told you this many times, and that's thanks to the new regulations, which I'm sure you know by now. Mercedes heading into this year have been yapping on about how they'll dominate this year and how almighty they'll be in race in, race out. And to be fair, were they wrong? They have won every race this year except for 3, which even then still gives them a commanding lead in both title standings. However, if they have been under pressure and losing out 2 positions, it's almost always to Ferrari. Ferrari have easily been the consistent second fastest year round, and if Mercedes ever make a mistake or have an issue plague them, Ferrari is basically guaranteed to capitalize on it. Of course, they are nowhere near the title, since even with Lewis second in the standings, he's still like, what, 50 points from Kimi Antonelli, who is genuinely on another plane of existence this year, and his second one at that. I'm willing to bet that even if Mercedes will have a disastrous second half of the year, Kimi would still win the title handily, since he is just that good. Pero escúchame, mi gente. I want to propose a reality that I have seen in my dreams. I, with my big 5-inch personality, wholeheartedly believe that Ferrari can and will win the F1 title still. Now, if you have been around for a long while, or are an OG of the channel, you would know that this video is basically a yearly tradition. And while in 2024 it was very possible in the constructors fight, and 2025 was really just for shits and giggles, this year I actually believe it could happen in both standings. But to understand why I feel this way, we of course need to rewind the clocks and see how their season has gone and why they will win it come Abu Dhabi. Make fun of me now, call me dumb, call me delusional, call me Mexican. When Ferrari are lifting the title in Abu Dhabi, don't come claiming you always believed in the process. Anyways, subscribe if you do trust the process, and make sure to check out Crash Happy for some crashes that are indeed happy. So with that said, let's get to quacking now.
A good weather for a race, but especially for a talk.
Heading into this season, things were looking real bleak for the Ferrari team and fans. 2025 was of course the equivalent of getting shot to death for Ferrari fans, and in fact, that would have been mercy. That's how bad the year was. So no one had hopes coming into this year, since why should we, man, to get another diagnosis? Well, I'm happy to report they did it. Shakedown comes around and Ferrari looked just as fast as Mercedes, with the added benefit of our engines not really breaking down at all except once with Lewis. And then preseason shows about the same results. Can we win round 1? Well, of course not, since this is Mercedes we're talking about. We looked right on their asses, if not slightly ahead, up until about Q3, where they dunked like 6/10 over us and dominantly win the race. We had them shook though, don't discredit us. China is also largely the same, with Lewis Hamilton finally stepping his sweet ass on the podium for the first time in red. So back-to-back podiums, decent qualifying, great drivers. I mean, shit, man, if we could find some decent times with a good upgrade package, who's to say we won't be on their asses? Japan comes around and McLaren think they are funny by inserting their noses in our fight, and it works great for them since they got Pacer on the podium ahead of Charles, while Lewis had a 2025 heritage race. Miami was also largely the same, except McLaren were fully ahead of us and challenging Mercedes for the win, and as if it couldn't get any worse, Charles, using his brilliant racing IQ that he's accumulated over the years, sees Piastri trying for his P3 place on the podium on the final lap, and Charles, being the genius he is, lets Piastri pass easily so he could size him up for an overtake around sector 1 of the track, where McLaren have been dominant in all weekend long, mind you. But thank God we didn't see that stinker play out, since he spun the car anyways at turn 3 and cut so many corners he was executed by the FIA. Masterful work, Charlie Kirk. I knew that neck of yours wasn't fat without a reason. Canada was more pain, blah blah blah. It was clear Ferrari were struggling now. McLaren have leaped them, and Max's Red Bull was starting to look really threatening. Luckily, Lewis was fighting him, and Lord knows he has experience with them, and the McLarens killed themselves that race, so Canada results-wise wasn't actually so bad. But then we arrive in Barcelona, and around here, Ferrari debuted some sick new upgrades, I remember, and Shakedown, also in Barcelona, Ferrari looked real impressive, and thank God glad that wasn't a fluke since, in the hands of Lewis at least, he was able to put that horse back on top since 2024 with some great driving and strategy for once, while Charles, let's move on. Austria did break this momentum, however, since that place is not really kind to our car typically, and especially with Lewis, but Silverstone was more peak, thankfully. Now this one is interesting since the weekend did start off wonky with Ferrari looking fast and then slow and then fast and then mid. It was the epitome of this classic meme, but thankfully the line was up for the race, and as American economics taught me, the line will never go down. Ferrari played their cards right and looked right for a P2 in the race with Charles since, despite being in the lead, Antonelli was on fresher tires behind and catching up to Charles at a blitzing speed, but Kimi's car entered its teen years and stabbed itself, taking him out the race and allowing Charles to comfortably come home for yet another red win. Standings wise, the team is looking real good, and as we head into 2 tracks the car should love theoretically before the summer break, could we actually do it? Well, at Spa, Lewis would be kind of mid since once again he struggled to keep up and overtake Max, but Charles is pretty dang good since he was in P2 for the most of it, and aside from the Piastri incident we don't talk about, he had a clean weekend. And finally, for the Hungarian Grand Prix, it was more second place cuckoldry for the team, and shit man, we screwed that up somehow since in the one weekend where Mercedes flat out were not the fastest, we weren't that for some reason. That honor went to McLaren, and in the race, we still failed to be second since Max genuinely diffed us with his fat ass, and Kimi Antonelli somehow spawned in P3. 2 weekends where big things should have happened for Ferrari led to lackluster results. Any sane person would look at this and be like, this team is generally cooked in garbage, bro. What sorry ass idiot would still believe in them by this point? Me, I'm the idiot. So as we head into the summer break with 12 rounds to go, here is how it happened. Here is how Ferrari won the drivers and constructors title. Post-summer break is where the season gets real. Tough calls have to be made, and Fred, I would hope, understands this. So let's say from this point forwards, Lewis Hamilton will start to get some preferential treatment towards his way, with maybe this treatment being enhanced if he really does well. So with that said, I'm going to go by the remaining 12 rounds and predict what I think will happen and how it will lead the team to winning it all. I will tally it up on the spreadsheet, so it should be easy to follow. Also, even though it is very likely, I am praying to every god there is that the calendar will feature no more changes since I worked real hard on this to make it realistic, so please, no final round in Imola, please. Anyways, round 12 in Zandvoort sees Ferrari debut a new upgraded car that sees it on par with Mercedes, and with upgrades not stopping anytime soon, perhaps they could catch Mercedes off guard. As for the weekend itself, it is a sprint weekend, and for the sprint qualifying, let's say they qualify decently well, and for the sprint race, I don't know, I'm feeling a cool little P3 for Lewis, while Kimi goes on to win it from Mr. Russell. As for the main race, I'm going to say Kimi goes on to win this one as well, since I feel like this is a track he will love, and despite last year, would win this one handily over Lewis in second and Georgie in a close third. Now is when shit is getting ultra real. Monza shows us a rare Kimi Antonelli car issue that doesn't see in DNF. However, without some nice juicy battery operating properly around here, I think he will fall down to 6th place by the flag, leading to a historic Ferrari 1-2 with Lewis leading the charge from a George Russell in P3, who I'd imagine gets a wave of boos heading his way. It's Baku time though, and this weekend sees another Ferrari upgrade come in and sees on top of the timings for most sessions, including the race win being in their grasp. However, the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc is the one on top since he is not stupid for once and straight up dogs Lewis around here, who comes home in second with Antonelli third. So as it stands right now, it is still looking quite comfortable for Kimi since there's no reason to believe that he won't win the title still. So long as he finishes closely with that Ferrari car, it's all good from the Kimster. Anyways, time for the new Mad Ring circuit, and let us welcome Lewis Hamilton as its first ever winner, and in my dreams the last ever one, since goddamn this is one ugly ass venue. Kimi Antonelli also does have a bit of a struggle here since, despite looking well in practice, gets caught out in qualifying and has a rough race on his hands as Charles nabs up second place from him. And on this high of good form, another upgrade package hits the second tower that, while minor, does alleviate some recent Mercedes developments as much as it can, which around the Malaysia track for the Bahrain Grand Prix, because that makes sense. Lewis, using his experience of this place, gets his win around here, along with Charles playing some good D to not block Mercedes Mercedes, but Max Verstappen, who I'm sure will be a demon around here. This of course means Merc have a shit weekend, and if I were Kimi, I'll be sweating real bad by now. And you know what wouldn't ease my anxieties? An engine DNF, which unfortunately for Kimi occurs around the Singapore sprint from the lead at that, and I guess the only redeeming thing about this is the fact that he lost 8 points compared to, let's say, some 25 points from the main race, which he thankfully nabs up, since I'd imagine he's extra motivated now to do well and dominate the Singapore main race from Lewis and Charles, of course. It's a great recovery for Kimi if I do say so myself, but I wonder how valuable those 8 points truly would have been. With 6 rounds remaining, here's where the title gets real sweaty and where we saw contenders fall out for good. 2025 saw Oscar completely bottle his lead during this time. 2024 saw Lando lose the momentum he had. 2021 saw Lewis rapidly close up to Max. Now is the time to be flawless, and because they want to be flawless, the drivers ironically start to show their flaws even more. Case in point, Coda, where Kimi straight up does not have the pace to be competitive, likely from being in his own head thanks to the media exacerbating his anxieties. However, Ferrari unfortunately able to capitalize on this failure of his, which leads to George Russell pulling a sneaky one on everyone and napping up the dub. And oh my goodness me, what is going on now, since the podium for Coda is the exact same one here, except I would say George wins this one even more convincingly than last, all while Kimi is able to get 4th compared to 5th from last weekend, but it really should have been a podium finish considering the pace of the Mercedes car that week. Kimi is facing pressure unlike any this year, and similar to the levels of last year, where we know very well how bad he performed under those conditions. Kimi still has a very possible lead in the standings and can absolutely win the title still, but he needs to lock in again, and thankfully, I would say Kimi has a better mental about this compared to last year. So while he doesn't win in Brazil, with that honor instead heading towards Lewis's way, since this is basically another home race of his, Kimi is able to get 2nd place and starts to feel happy about himself once more. And this happiness turns into hope, since around Vegas, my god, what a performance. Just talent and perfection with every lap as he completely sweeps the Vegas weekend, and by now, despite Lewis actually leading the standings heading into and exiting the weekend, most would think Kimi is back to normal and will win the title. And what only bolsters this belief is Qatar, where Kimi wins once more, and to make matters worse, does so in a very competitive fashion, and to rub some more salt in that wound, sees Lewis finishing in 3rd and Charles 2nd, to some very heavy criticism, I'd imagine. So heading into the final round, Kimi leads the title with 413 points from Lewis's 406 points. Using some good old logic, Kimi is on some great form right now, while Lewis is potentially affected by last weekend. It seems Kimi will end up sealing the deal, right? Well, let us see. The weekend begins and qualifying sees both Mercedes and Ferrari sacrificing their second drivers to allow a tow in qualifying for their main stars, with the gap being oh so close. Let's say the gap was 0.012 seconds. Kimi Antonelli nabs up pole position with Lewis starting alongside. However, where Kimi doesn't know what to expect tomorrow, Lewis absolutely does. He has played these games before, many times in fact. If any driver can pull a miracle out of their ass and dog in their competition with one race to go, it would be Lewis. Except for 2021, but it wasn't his fault and he kind of did it anyways. So the race begins, and just like that, Lewis takes the lead at turn 1, and despite some early and very close challenges with Kimi that even includes them banging wheels at some point, Lewis keeps his cool. And as the first stops occur, Ferrari play their cards right, so when Kimi pits, Charles, who was pushing like hell, dupes him and puts up an almighty defense, and thanks to a safety car, brings Lewis close to him. From here, Lewis stays far ahead enough where he is not under threat from Charles, but stays close enough that he is benefiting Charles and his defense of Kimi Antonelli, and this dynamic plays out all the way to the end of the race, where finally, after so many years, the historic 7th title in 2020, the heartbreak of Abu Dhabi in 2021, the void years of 2022 to 2025, he has done it. Lewis has proved to us all that he absolutely still has it and has never lost it to begin with, and wins his 8th title in the sport and becomes the undeniable GOAT of it. A monumental season where the past and the future butted heads, and with the help of the present, the past came out victorious one last time before the future inevitably dominates for many years to come. Kimi Antonelli should keep his head up high, since what is he stressing for? He is barely 20 years old, and if he wins a title in 2027, he's still going to be the youngest to have ever done it. Hell, 2028 would barely be over it too. Kimi has such a bright future ahead of him, and this year should absolutely not weigh him down. And with Lewis finally achieving his desire of the 8th, part of me believes that he will follow his wasn't meant to be and retire suddenly a couple days later, opening up a potential Bearman-Antonelli rivalry that will be remembered. I do not suffer from OCD or anything of the such. Oh yeah, Ferrari also won the Constructors, but who honestly cares? So that was the prophecy I have seen. Guys, listen, this will absolutely happen, and quite frankly, anyone who denies it is either a hater, a Mercedes fan, or a Mossad agent. Which one are you, I wonder? Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to Amarzel Flock for the continued support, and make sure to join off your cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you have a like and subscribe since it really helps me out. Make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this, and as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.